Every Catholic school is entrusted with a sacred mission, but that mission requires a leader who can see what's possible and take courageous steps to achieve it. Slow down and join me as we reflect together on how visionary leaders can transform the future of Catholic schools. As we start to think about the kind of leadership we need to see in Catholic schools, it's important to begin by naming a few key differences between the work of Catholic school leaders and that of their public school counterparts. In public schools, the leader, usually the principal, is the chief academic officer in the school. In fact, the term principal was coined to reflect the idea that the leader of the school was the principal teacher. And while public school principals certainly deal with budgets, facilities, safety, and other operational concerns, the core of their work is primarily instructional leadership. In a Catholic school, on the other hand, the principal is also the academic leader, but the role typically includes a much wider set of responsibilities beyond instruction. For example, Catholic school leaders often carry greater accountability for finances, especially in terms of revenue and enrollment management. They engage in a different kind of advocacy, sometimes including political advocacy to advance the interests of the school. They may oversee marketing and branding, communications, and media relations. And all of this happens while navigating a particular governance structure, often involving a pastor, president, board, or diocesan office, and maintaining healthy relationships across those lines of authority. And overarching everything, the Catholic school leader is a faith leader, responsible for nurturing the Catholic ethos of the school and ensuring a faithful, mission-driven disposition across every dimension of the school community. In that sense, the Catholic school principal or president or head of school is running a small business and in many ways is called to lead as an entrepreneurial leader. So that idea matters. What do we mean by entrepreneurial leadership? Well, Merriam-Webster defines an entrepreneur as someone who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise. If we boil that down, we can identify a few core principles that are highly relevant for Catholic school leadership. So put another way, an effective entrepreneurial visionary Catholic school leader is intentional about assessing risks and challenges on the horizon while also understanding the school's value proposition, its strengths, its distinctiveness, its why, and bringing all of that to bear in service of mission. Let me offer an example from corporate America. In 2007, Apple rolled out the first iPhone. If you haven't watched Steve Jobs introduce the product, it's worth your time because it's really a masterclass in articulating vision. Jobs explained that the other devices of the day, things like flip phones, Blackberries, Palm Pilots, they all had useful technology, but they weren't designed well in terms of user experience and interface. Apple's approach was different. Apple sought to begin with the user experience and then build the technology around it. As we know, the iPhone transformed the landscape, and now nearly everyone carries a smartphone that functions essentially the same way. Now, I don't always love making comparisons to corporate America, but the spirit of leadership in that approach, starting with purpose, understanding the user, designing strategically, all of that can be applied to Catholic school leadership. So let me ask you, are you starting to feel energized about your vision for the school that you lead or that you want to lead? I hope so. Vision is important, but we also need to understand the boundaries of an appropriate approach to Catholic school vision. A Catholic school does not exist simply to survive. It exists to serve the broader evangelizing mission of the church. Ultimately, the bishop is the authority on that mission in the local church. Catholic schools exist to form students into the human beings that God created them to be, so that they can live lives of discipleship and help to build the kingdom of God on earth. And Catholic schools should be available, accessible, and affordable for families who desire them. Consider an example from a 2012 issue of the New York Times. In a short article by Jenny Anderson on a slow news day, she described an urban Catholic school in New York City that was struggling until it rebranded to attract itself to more affluent families. The school raised tuition to reposition itself in a different market, and as a result, enrollment increased. But I can't help wondering about the families who were left behind, families who could not afford that increase. What of the Catholic education opportunities existed for those families? One especially striking line from the piece described the principal, dressed in pearls and Tory Burch shoes, sitting in front of a portrait of Pope John Paul II, explaining that she had to save the school by rebranding it for families who could afford the tuition. Now, I don't know the principal or that school, and I have no ill will toward anyone there. But that story has always struck me as a sobering example of how easily Catholic schools can drift away from what they were created to do, to bring the good news to everyone, especially those who are poor, marginalized, or on the ragged fringes of society. So the leaders of Catholic schools need to be leaders who understand the contours and nuances of mission within that church's evangelizing framework, and who are also bold, visionary, and innovative in their approach. In every sense, we want leaders who lead with an entrepreneurial spirit. So with that, I'll leave you with 5 behaviors and qualities of an entrepreneurial Catholic school leader. And I invite you to reflect deeply on how these might strengthen your approach. Entrepreneurial Catholic school leaders establish vision and are fundamentally dissatisfied with the status quo. They're always seeking to grow and develop their schools for the better. They know their school's unfair advantages, and they steward and leverage them as necessary to move their schools forward. They build buy-in. They can bring people with them and mobilize their community toward their vision for their school. Along the way, they learn and adapt. They seek feedback, stay teachable, and adjust with humility. They persist. Even in times of desolation, they take the next best step. That next best step may be the one that secures a brighter future for the school. So in closing, I hope these initial reflections on visionary entrepreneurial leadership have helped expand your understanding of what Catholic school leaders are called to be. And as we continue to explore this topic, I invite you to consider, how can you become the visionary leader your Catholic school so desperately needs? Godspeed to you, and best of luck to your school and its students.